So if you're going to be planting your trees out in an orchard that has sheep in it or cattle for grazing the grass, or there's a risk of deer around, you're going to have to build a suitable guard to protect the trees. Now, over the years I've built lots of different tree guards, and the guard that I think is most effective and most affordable is one that relies on a single fencing stake and a galvanized weld mesh tube. Now, you can buy these galvanized weld mesh tubes pre-cut, or you can buy it on a roll and cut it down to size if you've got lots of trees to do. The height of the galvanized weld mesh roll depends on what you're protecting from. So sheep and most deer, 1.2 meters high to 1.5 meters high will be sufficient. If you've got cattle, then obviously they want to be a bit higher at 1.8. And the size of the stake is about 2 to 3 inches generally okay, and obviously the height depends on the size of the guard. So the first thing is to get your stake in the ground. It wants to be in at least 45 centimeters, 18 inches thereabouts. Post banger comes in useful. So the next thing is to dig the hole. Now, you want to dig the hole on the windward side of the stake that you've just put in, so that when the prevailing wind blows, the tree is not blowing against the stake, it's actually blowing away from it. So, I've dug the hole, ready for planting. I stripped the turf off and I put that to one side initially, and then all the other soil that's come out I've left in this heap. It's a lovely day for planting today actually. It hasn't rained for a couple of weeks, and so the soil has come out very friable. Lots of little aggregates there, that's what you want, like breadcrumbs. We're planting a bare root tree today, and even when the tree's dormant, it's quite helpful just to soak the tree in a bucket of water before you plant it if you can. It's not strictly necessary, but it all helps. So I've had that tree there soaking in a bucket of water. I'm going to offer it up. Now, despite the size of my hole, actually the tree roots of this are quite big, but it doesn't do any harm to prune some of these roots back a bit, slightly, so that they fit nicely in the hole. And actually, the important thing here is to get the height right. At the moment, that tree's too deep. You can use a stake or a spade across the top of the hole that you've dug just to see where that finished soil level is. The finished soil level wants to be just a little bit above the topmost root, maybe an inch or so, about 5 centimeters. So if we see there, currently that's much too deep. The graft union's there and it's going to be buried at that point. So I'm going to put the turf back in the bottom of the hole, chop it up a bit, and then offer the tree up, and hopefully then the tree will come up by a few centimeters and will be at the right height for planting. So that's a better height. Not too deep, but not too shallow. So the next thing is to bring the soil in around the roots, and it's important that you shake the tree up and down a little bit so that the little crumbs of soil fall in around the roots and get rid of any air gaps. Once you've got most of it in, you can use your heel to firm down the tree, firm down the soil around the roots so it's nice and secure, like this. So now if I tug that tree, actually it's not coming out the ground at all. By heeling it in with your heel, you're getting rid of any air gaps and keeping this tree nice and secure, and then the rest of the soil can just get pushed back on with a spade. So, tree's planted nicely up against the stake, as you can see, just a few centimetres away at the top. We're going to secure that with a tree tie in good time. Before we put the weld mesh guard around, you still need to consider putting on what we call a rabbit guard, which also protects against voles. You've got a couple of options with rabbit guards, either these spiral guards, like this green one, or these what we call flex guards, which wrap around. They're both made of plastic. This is biodegradable. This one's not biodegradable. This one will expand as the tree grows. So if I had to choose one, I'd probably go for the flex guards. Even though we've got this weld mesh guard around the tree stopping sheep and deer, potentially cattle, rabbits can get under it and voles can certainly get under it or get through it. So having this one of these two options on the bottom of the tree just makes sure that it's belt and braces. The tree's protected from the livestock and it's protected from rabbits and voles. So I'm going to go for a flex guard today, and they just wrap around the bottom of the tree. If you had branches coming off this tree, then you would just prune them off so that you can get the guard round effectively. But you'll see it just simply, lift the label up there so that we can remember what the tree is. It's a Pei hembury actually, which is a local cider apple. So the flex guard's on like that, and you can just push it in slightly, not too deeply, but just slightly. And you don't want to drive it into the soil because then potentially roots might start growing through it. But just lightly on the soil, that's nicely protected then. So the next thing is to attach the weld mesh guard, and we're going to use fencing staples to attach it to down one length of the opening on the guard. So before we put the weld mesh guard on, we're going to mulch the tree. It's easier to mulch it before the guard goes on. I'm using composted wood chip basically. It's got a bit of conifer in it, but I'm not worried about that. Mulching is the absolute necessity with planting new trees because it stops the grass growing so much. It stops the grass growing, and the grass is a big bully for water for the young growing trees through the summer, especially when it goes dry for a long time. So mulching with a nice thick layer of wood chip is ideal. And we just want to put a few shovels down, a few spades should I say. What we don't want to do is have the mulch right up against the tree. So keep a bit around the base of the tree free of mulch, and just have it nice and thick around the outside. So I've got the weld mesh guard here. I'm going to use these fencing staples and attach it down one side, and then we'll use cable ties to pull the other side together so that in the future we can undo the cable ties and open the guard up so we can prune the tree or weed around them if we need to. So I'm just using a few cable ties to pull the two sides of the guard together. Now cable ties are obviously made of plastic, but if you're careful, you can, with the tip of a knife, you can open them up without having to cut them so that they have a longer useful life. 3 or 4 cable ties down the length of this should be sufficient, because we're also going to add a strand of barbed wire. Now the barbed wire is going to stop the sheep and the cattle from rubbing against the guard. It's actually really important. But the barbed wire will also help keep the guard secure. So here's the barbed wire bit. Just need a couple of meters, maybe 2.5, 3 meters length. It's pretty horrible stuff, barbed wire, but it's very effective at stopping the sheep and the cattle from rubbing against the guard. If they rub, then they could easily push the whole thing over. So it's an important part of the construction. So just hook it around the bottom, close it up a bit, and then simply, without damaging yourself, just wind it round a bit. As you can see, this is not a new piece of barbed wire. I'm reusing it from another tree guard. And then once you get to about 1 meter or so, well, this is for sheep, should be sufficient. You can just close it up, and that will stop them from rubbing. So, tree guard secure. The last thing is one of the most important things. They're all important things actually. Is to get the tree tie securely on the tree at the right place in the tree guard. So if we don't use a tree tie, the problem is that this tree is going to rattle around in the wind and get severely damaged on the top of the metal guard. In fact, you could easily kill the tree if it was just rattling around on metal like that. You have to use a buckle tree tie like this, which is quite long, and it has a rubber kind of stopper. And what we're going to do is put it around the tree like that, so it's looped round, and this is the important bit. It has to be at the top of the stake. There we go. So that's really nice and secure now. The buckle's tight. It can't slip down or slip off the top of the stake. and the tree can still move around in the top, but it's not rattling against this metal frame, which is the really important thing. In a year's time, you want to come back and just loosen this a little bit, give the tree a little bit more space with the tree tie, so that because it's obviously going to thicken up and get bigger in diameter. So regular checking is really important. But basically that tree is now secure against sheep, against deer, and if you used a bigger guard it would be secure against cattle, and the tree's happy and I'm happy. Thank you.